So the other day, I was at my kickboxing class, and I joined the class probably now after 3 or 4 years of watching my sons participate in the class, and it's a pretty normal Muay Thai class. You got people of different ages, and so as I was walking in, I heard the Muay Thai instructor talking to this young black kid. He's an Asian guy, and not an overbearing guy, but you know, just talking to the kid and explaining to them, hey man, if you come in here and you're aggressive and you're fighting people and you're hitting them all hard, then they're gonna hit you back, and and you can't really be angry when they do that because that's what happens. But I didn't really pay too much attention because it wasn't none of my business. I did the class, um, pretty much, non-eventful class. When the class was over, I sat down. I'm tired, because I'm actually one of the older people in there. My sons actually take the class. My boys are 16 and 14. But as I was sitting down on the class, the same kid that I saw speaking with the instructor, came up to me. He a little black boy. Come to find out, he's about 16 years old. And his first response, and I understand why the brother gravitated to me because I'm black, he's black, and everybody else in there isn't black, and he feels comfortable with me. And then on top of that, I got this Papa Bear persona. I'm real chill. Everybody knows me. Pretty much everybody's comfortable with me, and they see I'm in there to not hurt anybody, not prove anything, but just to get some exercise in. And so he sat and he said, man, everybody, this is what the kid said, right? Without even introducing his name, I could tell when he just had something on his mind, he wanted to talk. And so I'm sitting here, he's sitting to my right. He says, yeah, it just seems like, everybody in here thinks I'm the bad guy. Everybody in here they want to hit me, they want to hurt me. And I said, okay, calm down. I said, what are you talking about? And he start trying to explain that he goes hard, and I'm just doing it, making excuses for himself, and, playing the victim role, and I could tell he got the little long dreadlock hair. I couldn't even see the boy's eyes because his hair was in twist and it was covering his eyeballs. I couldn't even look him in the eye. All of these are telltale signs that this boy is being raised by his mom. I could just look at it, you can tell, So I heard him out, and I just kind of didn't want to get too, because it's not my son, I didn't want to get too deep into it about what happened. But I basically said, man, these people are not your enemies. You're just here to learn and train, and if you go hard, then people are gonna go hard against you. It's a fighting class, and so that's kind of what happens. But I kind of just told him to chill a little bit, but it gave me great pause. I thought about it, and then I compared that little boy to my 16-year-old son. Everybody says how respectful they are. My 16-year-old, my 14-year-old, and even though they are advanced in multiple martial arts, they are under control. They're emotional. They're not emotional. They're strong. They're studious. So anyway, I felt compelled to speak to the instructor afterwards, and so I talked to him briefly, and I was kind of telling him, what had happened, and he was like, oh yeah, that kid. And so he basically told him the story. He goes hard and he's swinging for the fences. He's pushing hard. And so I'm like, okay, I'll pair you with somebody who you can fight hard with. You can get that out the way. But then when that happens, guess what? When he's actually hit with some confrontation, some real life fight, then he basically start complaining about how that person is more advanced than him. And he started complaining because you want to go hard, but you don't have the technique or the skill set, and now you're in there feeling the consequences. So you can't both, you can't be a victimizer and then complain was when you get victimized. You know, you come in here acting like you want to fight, but the truth is you want a victim. You see, and I had to kind of explain to the professor. I say, look, you know, and I empathize with the young man. You know, I do. I empathize with him because he doesn't know any better. As I said earlier, he has female coping mechanisms. He gets that from his mother. You know, you get that from females. When you're around a lot of females, you realize, and I broke this down for the instructor, and I said, so you have a young man who's been raised by his mom. I said, you have a lot of that in the black community these days. I can tell by the hair covering your eyes, you know. I can tell by the way in which you played the victim role, you see. I can tell by the way in which, you know, when you're confronted with confrontation and it's too overwhelming, now you want to plead for help. And it's a problem that we have in the black community. So I kind of broke it down to the instructor, who again, who's an Asian fella. And he understood a little bit more. I said, but it's also the reason why we have a lot of college level athletes who it takes a special kind of man to pierce through those feminine taught female brain oriented coping mechanisms. I said it's the reason why a lot of coaches have such a hard time, you know, teaching black boys. But if you can get through that and you can get them motivated, a lot of them are excellent athletes. They would be excellent martial arts combatants, but it's the mental, you know, it's the mindset. And so I also explained to the coach, I'm like, you see my sons, you see how different they are? He's like, yeah, they're very respectful, very calm. They follow instructions. You know, they don't back down in a fight. You know, they deal with it. And I say, but unfortunately, a lot of young men, young black men, don't have that because they don't have men in their lives, strong men. Because some brothers do have fathers, but their fathers were raised by women, so they have female coping mechanisms. They get overly emotional, and then they play the victim role. And you can see the prison is filled up with those type of men. Penitentiaries are filled up with men who haven't been taught to control their emotions. So, you know, what I want to talk to you all about today is, you know, dealing with this moving forward, because we have a generation, 2, maybe 3 generations of black men who see the world through their mother's eyes. A lot of you all disagree with what I say, but what you will find is there's a strong contingent of men and women who vehemently agree with what I'm saying, because the position that I take is always as a masculine man who thinks like a man, who's raised by dominant men, who has had an opportunity to pick different characteristics from masculine men that I like and incorporated them into my personality during my developmental years. Whether it be a dude who is a Vietnam vet, who was a hustler, or an upstanding attorney, like my dad, or football coaches, fellow teammates. I got a chance to be around enough masculine men that I could pick different characteristics, see how they respond to certain environmental stimuli, how they interacted with women, how they interacted with other men, how they interacted with anybody. And I was able to pattern myself after that. A lot of these young men these days, they don't have any men around them. They don't have fathers, they don't have brothers. All they have are women. And so when it comes to dealing with stress, when it comes to dealing with conflict, when it comes to dealing with women, when it comes to dealing with other men, they pattern themselves after their moms, or they pattern themselves after the women that they see in their environment, whether it be grandma, auntie, sister, cousin, whoever. That's who they're surrounded by. And so in dealing with the world in a man's body from a woman's perspective, they're bound to get it wrong. You see, they they see the world differently. Now, the way in which you try to counteract that, me basically living in Texas, a long way away from the majority of my family in California, where I had uncles, where I had cousins, um, male cousins, male friends. For the most part, what I did was I tried to create a village around my children. So I enrolled them in martial arts very early. And I'm not taking away from my sons, uh, the maternal side of their family, but this presented me with an opportunity to pick and choose the type of man I wanted to be around. So in place of uncles and grandfathers and cousins and brothers, um, they had their martial arts coaches. They had their kung fu instructor, old white fella from Boston, still manly, 65 when we met him. I think he's probably about 75 now. They had their black Shotokan instructor, old black man from Harlem, New York, who moved down to Texas and operates the train hardcore, old school type grandfather dude, Marine Corps, worked in the penitentiary as a guard. And so they get that, they get that old school tough black man. Their Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructor, real cool guy, very manly, very dominant, fighting spirit, fiery spirit. And so over the years, over the years, they've been able to pick up those traits. From me, they can pick up traits. They can see how I am. They can see how when it's time to get things done, daddy gets things done. I'm good at leadership. I run my business. I run my house. It's a tight ship. When it's time to move, it's time to move. And they know how to, they pattern themselves after me also. But, that provided me, basically what I'm saying is, boys are built. The characteristics and the psyche of the typical male is built. They literally take the characteristics, what we'll call bricks. They take bricks from this man, bricks from that man, bricks from this man, and they put them in their own psyche, and they use that when necessary. So what happens to a young black boy, or any boy, who's surrounded by women, who grew up and he watched how his mother interacted with the school teachers? He's going to interact the same way with the school teachers. You want to know why some of these young men are sassy? It's because their mother was sassy. Now, sassy for a man may not come out the way sassy for a woman has come out. You got a man who's 235, 40 pounds. When he's being sassy, it might just come off as aggressive or overly emotional, or you might see him as a reactionary to even little things. He's easily brought to a harassed state, or the term is irascible. And so you see that, but with this situation with this young fella, basically he has not been presented with an opportunity to prove his manhood. So when he comes to the Muay Thai campus, or comes to the Muay Thai academy, every fight for him, every sparring match is where he's presented with an opportunity to prove his manhood, because he don't really know how to deal with men. He's not been. It's obvious that he's not been around enough men to know how to interact with men. He doesn't even know what hierarchy is. He thinks he can go in there and battle it out and gain respect, but all that's going to happen is you're going to get a fight. And when you get to the point where people think, oh, this dude is just doing too much, you might get hurt. You might get knocked out. You make yourself the villain in the situation, and all the heroes are going to team up against you. So, it's important that we talk about these things, fellas, because there's millions upon millions of black men. Some of you listening to this video, you never have had a male role model, much less a father. You didn't even have a role model around. Some of you fellas who are grown men, 45, 50, 60 years old, there are some deficits in your character. There's some deficits in your character because you didn't have that father figure. You didn't have a man. You didn't have a dominant male. Some of you all don't even have men in your lives until you grow up and enter into high school and start playing sports. But those men, those coaches aren't your fathers, you know, and you may pattern yourself after those men, but, you know, at the end of the day, what do you see them 2-3 hours a day, you know, for a 3-4 month time period while you're training. And then you go back to that female dominated world and you have to interact with your mother, you know. I saw a really disturbing video, you know, because see, the thing is, a lot of you guys don't even know there's an issue. You're too afraid to say, my mother did a bad job raising me as a boy. You're afraid to say that because you don't want to talk bad about your mom. But the truth is, she is not able. I don't care how much this woman worked, how many manly things she did, she's still a woman. And she doesn't know how to interact or operate in the world as a man would. And she can't teach it because it's not something that you can teach. It's something that boys have to observe. They have to see for themselves and pattern. I'm not sitting around telling my sons, well, look, when somebody does this, you do that. The only very rarely occasions do I do that. No, you have to see how I operate. When I go to the local grocery store, how I speak to people, the space that I have between myself and the next man or anybody on the elevator or any tight quarters, how I speak to the Uber driver, how I speak to the bus driver, how I speak to people who are in authority, how I speak to my woman, you know, how I allow people to speak to me. You know, this is something that boys have to observe, how I walk in public, you know, how I move. My sons will pattern themselves after that. I'm their 24-hour, 7 days a week person that they get a chance to observe. Now, will they become me? Will they become duplicates of me? No. No, they're going to have their own experiences. They're going to have their own likes and dislikes. They'll take from my character what they like, and they'll reject what they don't like. Same thing with those other men that I've brought them around. They'll take what they like and what they don't like. But the bottom line is, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of men that my sons have to choose from their school teachers to their cousins to their uncles. But I've made sure there are enough masculine dominant men around them from a young age. They can begin to see the common traits that we all share. You know, they can begin to see a pattern of what it takes to be a successful, dominant man in this world, and they can use that. See, if you only got one man to pattern yourself after, and he's a weak, soft sucker, that might be the person you end up patterning yourself after. But if I surround you at a young age by dominant, masculine men, and that's all you see, well, you basically say, well, I see what all these men have in common. I think that's a good characteristic. But bottom line is, I know how I would interact with somebody using that. And then I also, I see men who are not dominant, who are weak, who are unsuccessful, who falter at the opportunity to present themselves as men to the world. In my books, Rules to Live By, I talk about a situation where my father, we were at an ice cream shop. He was with, actually I think it was 31 Flavors. This is probably like 1980 or something like that. And I explained how I was in the back seat. His wife at the time was in the front seat. She was pregnant. And her brother, who had just got out the Harris County jail, was sitting over for something stupid, was sitting over in the passenger seat, rear passenger seat. I'm probably 8, 9 years old. I'm just a kid. And, you know, we got out the car, and, you know, a few minutes later, there was a truck parked next to us. We got out the car. A few minutes later, white dude busts in the door. Mind you, this is the 1980s, man. White dude busts in the door. He might have been fresh out of Vietnam, and complained about how the woman hit his truck. Now, he didn't know my dad was with him because for whatever reason, my dad hung back in the car for a minute. So I got out the car. I walked in. Getting ready to order my ice cream. My stepmother, who was a Puerto Rican lady at the time, and she wasn't Afro-Latino looking. She looked like a light-skinned white Latina, Mexican, whatever. But this is my dad's wife at the time, and her brother, who was also at the door, so who was also at the counter. So it was me over here by myself looking at the ice cream. I'm looking at the daiquiri ice cream. That was my favorite ice cream back in the day. She's standing over about 3 or 4 feet on the right, and her brother, who's also basically, you know, Puerto Rican looking dude, is over to the left. Now, you know, he just got through talking about how tough he was and how, you know, they're from New York and everything. But when that white boy busts in there saying, "Who backstabbed my goddamn truck?" they got quiet. Everybody was quiet. You know what I'm saying? And he got to cussing out my dad's wife at the time. I mean, all kind of stuff. You understand what I'm saying? And so as he was doing that at the door, he had the door open. My dad kind of popped in the door and was standing off to his right saying, "Would you like to step outside? Would you like to step outside?" And I'm not knocking him. I understand the man's a lawyer, you know, "Would you like to step outside?" And I'm thinking to myself, man, you know, nah, that ain't really how I could see that handled by some men that I know. You know, the man was basically complaining that, you know, my dad's wife had scratched his truck when she opened the door to get out to go in the ice cream spot. You know, I looked around and said, "This ain't none of my business." I kept ordering my ice cream. The lady, you know, eventually the man went on off and I ordered my ice cream. It was all cool. On the ride back to the house, right, these two men was talking about what they were going to do and how they would have handled it, you know, and he must have had a gun or something talking like that. And I'm thinking to myself, y'all let that white man punk y'all. Y'all let that black dude and a tough Puerto Rican dude from New York, y'all let this white boy from Texas punk both of y'all. And I'm thinking to myself, man, my Uncle Slim would have handled that totally different. And my Uncle Robert, I already know how he would have handled it, you know. So those of you guys who read my book, Uncle Bob is a Vietnam vet. And, you know, he basically would have not allowed him to talk to his woman like that. He would have walked up to the white boy, pulled out his blade and say, "White, what you say?" And if the white dude had said anything out of pocket, he'd have cut him. You see what I'm saying? And he wouldn't let him reach it. He wouldn't have made it to his gun. You see what I'm saying? But he wouldn't have tolerated that. You know, Uncle Slim, on the other hand, but either that, you see a confrontation. You don't see somebody mumbling off to the left, like, "Yeah, you want to step outside?" No, he would intercede. "Hey, don't talk to my woman like that, man." But Uncle Slim, and you guys who read my book, Uncle Slim is street dude, you know, and he probably about 6'7". Well, actually, probably about 6'9", and that's why they call him Slim. And he would probably say, "Hey, man, look, that my woman, she did it. All right, let's go out here and look at the damage. You know what I'm saying? I'll pay you for whatever damage it is, man, but we don't need to take this that way." And, you know, Uncle Slim would have tried to negotiate a peace settlement and been done with it, give him a couple of $100 so he can go get the scratch. He would have looked at it, examined it with the man, try to be reasonable with him. And, you know, if the dude got out of pocket, he'd be like, "All right, man, whatever, man, go on, man," you know. And but Uncle Slim would have, it would have, if that didn't work and the man still came at him, he would have dealt with it like a man, you know. I know Uncle Slim is not one to look for violence, but he will finish it. Bottom line is, both of those men would have stepped in. Both of those dominant, masculine men would have stepped in and interceded. And so, you know, and even the way my father did it, that was a way in which you can handle it. But, you know, I've been presented with, at that particular instance, you know, in dealing with that situation, I already knew, I saw how my father handled it. I saw how, you know, the other, my father's wife's brother handled it. He just kept looking forward. He thought, "I didn't want to go to jail. I just got out of jail." I'm like, "All right, man, whatever." But I, you know, that commanded no respect. And I'm sure the woman is looking at this. Here I am, pregnant, and I'm married to this man, and the most he can do is stand next to the dude and say, "Yeah, would you like to step outside?" And the white dude just ignored him. But I know Uncle Alfonso would have purposely interceded. Uncle Robert would have definitely interceded, stepped between him and his woman, and put the situation in check. you know, and so that's what you get. You can't teach that. You know, you have to see that. You have to experience that. That's why it's so important for men as they're growing up to be around dominant, masculine men so they can learn, you know. And so when we go back to this situation with this young boy, I can tell, you know, you've never actually had to deal with other men, you know, because you can't pick a fight and then get mad when the fight is brought to you. You can't go hard and then get mad when somebody else goes hard on you. That's a feminine trait. You know, that's now you playing the victim. And then when you called out on it, then you lie about it. You see, that's trying to avoid responsibility. We see women do that all the time. You see, he like, you know, because apparently when he was, and I'm going back to the original conversation when I was talking about the young man complaining to the coach how they going hard on him. He's like, well, you going hard on them. you fighting them. You mad because they fighting you back. And then he like, that's what women do. That's avoidance. That's refusing to take responsibility for their actions. You know, like we say all the time, you know, women, you know, that's responsibility, you know, accountability is kryptonite to women. And I understand why, you know, because they don't want to be shamed. You know, they don't want to be made to feel bad. You know, shame is how women keep each other in check. So they can avoid shame and not be embarrassed. You know, they don't lose status. But the more you shame, the more shameful you are, you know, your status goes down. So I get it, you know, and that has a lot to do with how the human being developed in social circles. You know, women want to run from shame. They use shame as a tool of conformity. And so now here you are, you've done something shameful and you're being reprimanded for that. You don't like it. So women don't like shame. And because they don't like shame, they don't want to accept accountability. They don't ever want to say they're at fault. They don't ever want to say they're wrong. It's innate in them. I get it. But as a man, that doesn't work well, because see, shame and pain, it helps you grow. You see, when you can admit fault for something, then you learn from that. You grow. If you continue going through life as a man and you don't accept fault for the things that you do, then you're going to be punished. And unlike women and girls, men actually are punished. Men actually suffer the consequences, which is why at a young age we typically realize you know, you got to keep your hands to yourself, because you put your hands on somebody, there's nobody out there saying, oh, don't hit boys, don't hit boys. They don't lay you out. And that's a lesson that we learn. Boys learn consequences very early. But when you have a young man who has not been raised around men, who has developed female coping mechanisms, then this is what you get. You know, now, you know, this is something that's been on my mind. And I did actually tell the coach when I said, well, you know what you should do, man, because I also understand this. This is another dynamic. He's black, you know, and you already going to be vilified for being a black man. I get that, you know, even though he's 16, just like my son, he's already going to be vilified. So, you know, I get that too. And that's an unspoken, that is an unspoken understanding that as a black man, I have, you know, that if you got a black boy, you dealing with a black boy, you got black sons, they need to understand that they're automatically going to be vilified for whatever they do. They are automatically the bad guy. That's why I tell you fellas, just go ahead and embrace it, accept being the bad guy, because that's your status. You the man in black. But I told the coach, I said, yeah, he can work with me and my sons, man. I'll work with him. And when I get with the little fella, I'm going to be like, yeah, man, you know, I got a son your age. And I'm going to tell him straight up, man, look, you know, if you want to go hard, I'll go hard with you. But you're going to lose, you know, because if I unload on you, you're going to break like glass. I'm 6'4", 305 pounds. I can hit like a brick house. You understand? But I think the best thing to do is just work on your technique. You 16, you got a whole life to work on this. But if you want to go hard, you can go hard. You want to go hard with one of my sons over there, especially that big one, you can go right on ahead, because he's 16 and you 16. But he been raised by his daddy. He could bench press about 275 pounds. He's only 181 pounds. So You know, you want to go at it, and he probably had 1,000 fights since he was, 6 years old. So, you can do that. You want to stand up. And that way he can learn his lesson. He cannot be felt to be bad and vilified. He'll be around other black men and black boys. So, I opened that opportunity up for him. I told the professor, told the coach, hey, look, kid can work with me. And that's really the most I can do, you know what I mean? But at 16 years old, it's just going to be too little too late for the young man, and he'll just have to learn. A lot of you men out there, a lot of you guys, you didn't even know what it was like to be a man growing up. It took you to you 30, 35 years old to finally start having some understanding about what it is to be a man, just because you were raised by women. And so that's something that we have to deal with, fellas. Something we got to